when people are able to utilize the tools in the way I believe they're intended to use, which is to take away some of those mundane aspects and allow them to really be able to prosper in those deeper thoughts about how they're solving real world problems. That's one of the things I think schools have eliminated too often, is they've eliminated the real world scenarios. And I think AI, in conjunction with some very creative young people, you can solve a lot of the world's problems. I don't think there's any shortage of problems to be working on, and they can be very regional. They can be very, much larger systemic issues and even global issues. But I think we have the opportunity with AI to really start solving some problems in a very different way, because of the amount of time that some of these elements that used to take us to do is no longer there. It's not the barrier that it once was.
Hello, my fellow school leaders and superintendents. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder at TomoClub. And today on our TomoClub podcast series, we have the superintendent of Randolph County Schools, Shawn Dilly. And today's topic of discussion is going to be AI and future of schools. Usually when we talk about AI in education, the conversation is mostly dominated by voices from Silicon Valley or massive urban districts. But what does the AI revolution actually look like on the ground in the heart of a country? That is something that we want to uncover more. And that's why I think Shawn Dilly will be a great contributor to this discussion from West Virginia. And he is also an author of a famous book called Schools of the Century and Beyond, which I'm very interested to read after our podcast today. But thank you so much for joining us today, Shawn.
Thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Perfect. So I always start discussing by my very first question is what got you into education in the first place? And is that reason still valid after so many years?
Well, I think it is. I mean, ultimately, I was actually originally an art teacher and really enjoyed art, but art isn't necessarily an easy path for people to create a career path in. And then my parents encouraged me to consider education as a path. And so ultimately, my love for art led me to being a teacher. And because I found that I enjoyed teaching art as well. And then ultimately, that led to me thinking about how do I enhance and improve the systems. And so eventually I moved up from various positions into where I'm now a superintendent and have been a superintendent for, this is my 10th year as a superintendent in school districts.
Okay, that's interesting. Usually, no offense, but usually it's the core math science teachers who actually go up the ladder. So I'm glad that there are people from art background as well who could um, make it to the superintendent levels. So is that a reason, like, are you able to still do something about art, like holding session for students or personally able to take out time for, improving your craft?
I do a little bit, not as much as I would like to. I do it. I do have probably the best PowerPoints and presentation looks as far as anywhere, but is in the district for the most part. But no, ultimately, I think for me, one of the things I understood very early on in my teaching career is that not everybody's going to be an artist that came through. I mostly worked with high school students during my time in the classroom, and what I learned there and what the value for art for me was is it really shaped how I looked at the world and thought about the world, and taught a lot of critical thinking and problem solving skills. And so sort of underlying understanding is sort of what I see valuable for all students as they walk through education's pathways, because one thing that is certain is there's a lot of uncertainty about what the future is going to look like and what students need to be prepared for.
No, agreed. And that's why schools hold that huge responsibility to, even though the things may be unpredictable, but still they have to have some kind of stability in the school itself, which is a very, I would say, ironical situation that whatever is happening outside, the school becomes a sanctuary where, there can be a safe space to still prepare for that craziness out there. So 100%. And since school just started, I know this is the most crazy time of the year. Um, but what I want to ask, honestly, is over the last 20 years or 30 years, there are a lot of technology trends in AI. Oh, sorry, not a lot of technology trends in schools that came out, whether it was initially digitization in terms of computers, then internet, even how the recorded video concept came in, and that was readily available for students through YouTube or other platforms. The learning management softwares came in, assessment technologies came in, engagement products through various gamings, quizzes, VR came in, and it that one-on-one device as a was pushed across the US because that was supposed to be changing the education altogether, and everything did to a certain degree. But AI is being talked at a very rapid pace. Like ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, so it has not even been 3 years. So what's different this time about this technology piece? What's your take on that?
Well, I think we can look at it many different ways, but I agree with you. We've seen all of those changes, but really, when you actually look at practice and um, the way schools look, we haven't seen a large change or shift in the past, other than really digitizing processes
Right.
up to this point. This is actually something colleagues and I've discussed a few times, and other out of the box thinkers have been thinking about, that we haven't really seen the seismic shift in how education is delivered and done. And I think this is where AI really is creating a different sort of circumstances because of its abilities to fill in not only a lot of gaps, but also to take the lead in certain aspects. Obviously, there's still a lot of trepidation around how that looks and how it manifests. But I mean, when I was saying something just as around 3 years ago that AI was going to be taking over schools pretty quickly, people looked at me like I was crazy. And then the following, not in within 6 months, there were two schools open, completely being taught by AI. And now my understanding is in the one of the schools in the U.S. is getting ready to open 30 to 40 new school systems across the United States, where AI is the backbone of the teaching component, where teachers facilitate and do other aspects beyond what the AI isn't capable of. And I think it is that model that is really going to transform where we go. And I think there's still a lot of uncertainty what that looks like. I think there's a lot of systemic barriers. There's a lot of ideological barriers. But if you're open to what I think some of the folks are calling the human 2.0 definition of AI, then I think we have an opportunity to really regain things, to shape things into a different approach. Because what we're seeing, I know, at least in the United States, and I think even when I worked in the United Arab Emirates for 3 years as a school leader there too, we were struggling to find teachers. And we have that same issue right now in Randolph County. And so between that driving force and then just the sheer need for upskilling and reskilling of workers that are being displaced by AI, education can't keep up. So I think you're going to see AI stepping into roles that a lot of people wouldn't have traditionally considered. And now that you're seeing also the marriage of AI and robotics, I think there is a whole nother layer of this that we probably don't have time to discuss today. But I just think people have to be very open about this and be at the table so that we can really shape this, because there are some dangers. And let's just be very honest about, there's ethical issues and there's a variety of other concerns. But at the same time, this is going to be part of our students' world. So we shouldn't be denying them access. We should be showcasing them and then informing them about how to use it safely, and delivering it in a way that really helps that.
Right. Now, you did give a complete 360-degree view on AI in that such short time, which is beautiful. But I agree with you. This technology is nothing like ever before. So just comparing it with previous shifts and just calling it a tool, which will be again a shift, I think it's discounting a lot on the potential of this technology, because this can be a huge paradigm shift. Like what you just said, that within 3 years now, AI can become the complete backbone, or they can be AI first schools. And I agree with you. So you did talk about a lot of issues, but I want to break it down further. So what specific problems maybe you're already working on, maybe you already have solved, or you want to solve at Randolph? So what do you think is that specific problem AI will be first to act on?
Well, I think there's a lot around the ethics of who does it belong to? Is this your writing? Is this, especially when you're looking at like ChatGPT or large language model tools like that? And I think there's some of those components of that. But part of what I think education has to do as a whole is realize those tools are there now available for our students. Therefore, we should be raising the depth of knowledge and all of the layers so that that what we're asking our students to do, it goes well beyond what the technology can do and requires a different level of critical thinking, analysis, and other elements that the tools can't quite do at this point. And that's a big stretch for our teachers because what I've seen in probably in observations of literally thousands of classrooms is we're still at moderate to low levels of depth of knowledge in the majority of our classrooms. And so it's a real seismic shift, I think. And we saw all that pushback from higher ed, for example, when ChatGPT was launched, and how many of them just said absolutely no and tried to put barriers to access. And so I think there's still a lot of regulatory components that we're going to have to try to navigate with not just schools, but just even as a governance related to legislatures and Congress and a variety of other governing bodies throughout the world. But where I think we have real legitimate issues is um, figuring out how do we let students use these tools with denying them the ability to develop these critical thinking skills, those problem solving skills, what I've referred to as future ready competencies in my book. But how, that's where I think the real dilemma lies, is using these tools, and they're evolving so fast and getting so capable of creating so many things so quickly. The human 2.0 component of this kind of can get lost in that. And I think sometimes we're not recognizing that we have to shift as a school system. And this is sort of some of the commentary I had in my book a little bit. AI didn't kind of have the rollout that it did prior to me writing the book, um, but ultimately, we're seeing that emotional intelligence and that human piece is kind of as Simon Sinek would refer to it as human skills, is sort of the primary piece that we should be teaching kids because it's what computers can't replace right now or AI can't replace. And so that's part of the dilemma I think we have in schools right now is how do we get rid of the situations that are being created by technology right now, because there is new brain research and concerns around screen time and all of those things. And I don't think we have time to discuss all of those, some of the newer context of the studies. But so some of this is balancing all of that. And I think that's one of the real dilemmas of where do we invest our time and energy of both training our students and our staff and what direction to go, because there seems to be such a explosion of growth in all of these tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem that we have more than anything right now is just how do we bring everybody on board and then move them forward in a way that really helps them be prepared for that future challenges.
No, absolutely. I think I love the part where you said not yet. Like AI is not working on the human skills, and there is a room right now which might be relevant for us. But in terms of the problem part, ethical aspect, I think there are a lot of strategies right now being worked upon actively, and which is constantly evolving, which is helping on both the sides. How teachers are using it so that their efficiency can go up, their they are teaching students digital citizenship, which includes both ethical aspect and critical thinking aspect. And how are we training students so that they don't lose their voice while working with AI? Because there is
Yes.
an evident proven story of cognitive loss when you have over reliance on AI tools, that you tend to, there's a very famous trend. If you look at all the cards, they have all started to look similar. If you look at all the um, there is a kind of similarity across. So if you look at the people work, there is no diversity anymore, so it's reducing. So if you have over reliance, that diversity, that creativity is definitely can be hit hard. So yeah, that's the biggest problem that most of the schools have to deal with it on immediate basis, because we didn't even started talking about the problems that students are facing. Ethical is one part. The mental health part is another huge aspect where students have this new problem of AI psychosis, where they and
Mhm.
problem of having relationships with AI. In a way, they have companions. So there is a lot of ethical issues. So that's perfect. That's perfectly said. But what do you think is the use case? What's the most exciting use case you have found for both teachers and students right now with AI?
Well, I think the things that where I've seen the most excitement is just when people are able to utilize the tools in the way I believe they're intended to use, which is to take away some of those mundane aspects and allow them to really be able to prosper in those deeper thoughts about how they're solving real world problems. That's one of the things I think schools have eliminated too often, is they've eliminated the real world scenarios. And I think AI, in conjunction with some very creative young people, you can solve a lot of the world's problems. I don't think there's any shortage of problems to be working on, and they can be very regional. They can be very much larger systemic issues and even global issues. But I think we have the opportunity with AI to really start solving some problems in a very different way, because of the amount of time that some of these elements that used to take us to do is no longer there. It's not the barrier that it once was. And now, obviously, the the database and the things that they draw from are some things that we have to make sure, and making sure that we're not seeing errors in that information, and making sure, and that's a skill that kids need to learn as well as adults. Is the information being produced, does it really match what we really truly know about that topic or those issues? And that's some of the pieces that we also have to teach. But I think at the end of the day, we have lots of opportunities here, with creating solutions for challenges and needs that we didn't have in the past, just because of the capacity issues. I know, being at a very rural small district, we don't have the unlimited resources. We don't have even regional business partners. We have some fantastic partners, but they have limited capacity in themselves. And so I think these tools really give us the opportunity to do a lot of things differently. And I think there's so many different opportunities out there that exist, that I think we're doing a disservice if we're not exploring those for our students.
No, I absolutely. So again, if you can tell us a little specific about the use cases, because I know there are plenty, but one of the use case which you saw in the positive light from both teachers and
Yeah.
students. Not.
Well, I'll give you a good example, because this was a tool I just learned about this year, and I've actually presented it to our leadership and then moved it on to, I think I'd heard about a story of that leader turning it into something for their staff, and their staff and have ran off and used it. But Google's NotebookLM, I don't know if you're familiar with that particular tool or not, but it's a very interesting tool that takes the information that you upload and can transform it in different ways, but then it has a podcast format that you can actually listen to the podcast, and you can learn about it. Then you can actually even ask it questions. And so this history teacher was taking segments of their stuff, and they were going to be incorporating this podcast as a new way of presenting material to their students. And so it was just a really interesting approach to a tool that I was using. I've been using it myself, just to I would upload policies and listen to the podcast so that I would know what the changes were specifically to that. And then, even to the point that I would even ask it questions on very specific scenarios so that I could get its feedback related to that. And so we're seeing some of our teachers, I think, doing some of this work with our students in that regard. And so I think we're still very much at the infancy here in Randolph County, but I'm seeing some very, I'm trying to look at the people that are really starting to run with some of these tools. And I think that's what's really exciting for me to see, is some of them taking some of the things just like that history teacher had done. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as the coming weeks go.
That's very cool. What do you know? Do you remember the name of the product?
Yeah, it's Google's NotebookLM.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've used that a lot.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, we had it presented this summer and at a conference, and I brought it back and shared how they were using it. And like I said, I've been using it in a lot of different ways, and there's advantages in just that podcast, and now there's even a visual format. It can create
right.
a
Mind map.
visual, yeah, and mind maps as well. And just again, another tool that, if you're not aware of, and I think that's one of the challenges we have right now, is there's so many new tools being generated. we can't even keep up with all of the different tools that are available to us. But that's one of the better examples that I can think of right now off the top of my head.
No, absolutely. I think, in fact, I have a discussion with a professor from University of California, Chico, and she actually have done a thesis on how podcasting can be a great tool for universal design framework for teaching students,
Hmm.
because although that was in reference of how when you yourself do a podcast, you do your research, you present, you do your homework about it, and then come up with real time conversation. But yeah, I think even consumer end of being at the podcast level, people are definitely hooked to it uh, while on the drive or while in the classroom. So I think that's a very interesting use case. I haven't heard that before. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the more traditional things, where students are using it to evolve their writing. I mean, I think there's differing uses out there, but that's probably one of the more unique, newer approaches that I've heard as of late.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, one of the schools that we work with over there, they're using this product called Uber Duck, which actually convert the voice and make it sound like different accents, different languages. So even you have to put celebrity languages on top of it. So like Morgan Freeman is giving a lecture on, let's say, history, or David Attenborough, who's like Attenborough, like who do a lot of National Geographic documentaries. His voice is so amazing. So that's been used to teach students about universe. So yeah, I think a lot of engagement technologies, a lot of strategies are coming across with the use of AI. Also, have you guys done any kind of formal professional development for your teachers, or is it like mostly through peer-to-peer sharing and like internal discussions?
The predominant has been peer to peer. I've done some work with my school leaders and hoping that they would take that back to their folks. Um, Most of the AI we're using are like as I think you've mentioned, sort of the embedded tools that are embedded into our LMS and some of the other tools that we have. I mean, like we're utilizing Khan Academy and Conmingo, and some of those types of tools are going to be stuff they're going to be using at the secondary level. So I think we're seeing a lot of that traditional integration into additional or existing tools is where we're seeing most of the elements for our teachers. But one of the challenges we're having, as many rural America has, is access to people with the skill sets and the knowledge around a lot of this. So one of the things I've kind of put on myself to do is try to keep up to date as best I can, and then bring back anytime I come across something and to share that with our leadership teams so that we're at least aware of new tools and new things that maybe we haven't seen or heard from in the past. And I think that's one of the challenges we have because, like I said, there is something coming out practically every day right now. And so it's really going to be one of the things kind of reminds me, for those of us old enough to remember when the internet kind of blew up in the beginning and we just didn't know where it was going to go or how the things that came with it. That's where I think we're at now, but I think we're talking about even an exponentially larger shift
Yeah.
in what we can do and how we can do it. So I think this is, to me, can be seen as a very negative thing, but it can also be seen as a very positive thing. And I tend to look at it as the positive because I want to shape it into things that can really help advance our kids and be successful in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we will definitely discuss offline about this, because I think that's somewhere we hold deep expertise in. But on that other side, you are right. Any technology can, the probability of working with it will reduce the chance of it being negative, I would say. Ignoring it will definitely make it negative. So yeah, I appreciate that you guys are being much more proactive in working it out. Also, you did mention about the equity part. I think right now, so I was discussing with my other teammate as well. If you look at any kind of inequity, whether it's race, economic background, um, or physical disability, I think whatever gap they could create, the AI haves and AI have not gap can be 10x more, because the quality output of somebody who understands AI, they set the benchmark to a certain degree, that certain huge level that it's not comparable. So I do believe that I would love to know your thoughts as well on this equity front, because just providing devices, providing internet, and giving access to tools may not solve it. So, what are your thoughts on the equity part?
Yeah, I think inherently, as any time in history of education, equity has always been a concern, and I think this has the potential to create even larger gaps, or it has the potential to narrow those gaps. And a
Yeah.
lot of it's going to depend on how it's shaped and how it's supported. I think, and of course, I think there was some of the challenge with AI has been on the large language models is the inherent bias built into some of the databases that have been and so that is something I think has going to have to be addressed as well. And I think that is being worked on through, thankfully, some different companies. But I think there's some of those elements that we have to be aware of as we go. But again, I think you're right in the sense that this eliminates some barriers for some folks as long as school districts like ourselves, and we have a fairly large impoverished region and students, that population that we support. And so I do think that just the one-to-one device isn't necessarily it. And so where we see the biggest disparity is what I'm going to call a lack of exposure.
Hmm.
We have a lot of students that really don't get any educational exposure until they start school.
Yeah.
And so, whether it's with when they enter pre-K programs or whatever they enter, we see a lot of students that are missing significant exposure to books, reading, letters, you name it. And so when they start in kindergarten, perhaps, or even pre-K, they're years behind their peers.
Right.
And this is where a tool like I think, can help supplement the limited resources we have at schools to enable to close some of those gaps, because we're seeing really a growth of that in our communities. And of course, some of that started with the opioid epidemic, is where we started to really see significant issues starting to appear. And then when we hit the COVID situation and the global shutdown, it only kind of heightened or increased the number of students being impacted by that particular situation. And one of the challenges with that is also the fact that I'm going to be pretty blunt about it, but when a parent hands a cell phone to a kid from the time they're an infant, essentially to placate them, that's not necessarily exposure to the right things. And it's that screen time and development of anxiety and a variety of other mental health concerns is something we're seeing a growth of as well. And so I think all of this has to be kind of, we have to educate our communities, but we also have to educate our students and our systems about how do we navigate to ensure that they're getting the right things when they start school and then continue through school with.
No, I agree with you on that, all those points. And um, I think having this openness about discussion will be the only way to go. And so, plus, I love that point that there is a different side to this discussion, that equity gap can be reduced massively with AI on all different fronts. I think there are so many tools which can reduce the complexity of a lesson plan depending on the reading grade level that you are on. It can help you like handhold, like which every teachers cannot give you one-to-one personal support. So I think yeah, there are now there are practical approaches. It's not even anymore a
Yes.
concept. It's something which I see myself when I work with schools. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Now I want to talk to you about the future of learning. So we all know that AI is making strides in all the areas of lesson planning, differentiation, inclusivity, um, along with the ethical discussion and digital citizenship, but also on the assessments, inclusive assessments, where we can create multi-tiered assessment and as well as rubrics, even on the assignment grading level. Though I see that's the area which, if any kind of AI detectors or any kind of technology is worse than a coin toss. So I think assignment grading is still somewhere teachers have a big role to play, because it won't, first of all, it doesn't make sense that we upload students' information. So the AI will never understand the student's context here. Uh, so that front is something which is going to be sacred to the teachers for at least one academic year for foreseeably. Uh, but with all this in mind, what do you think is the future of school? Like, if we imagine this, all this what we just said has become an integral part of our daily life. So then, what do you how do you define a school in that future?
I think that's one of the big challenges that we're wrestling with, especially those of us looking at what the future of education should be. And I think you're going to see even like one of the schools that I think is leading that conversation right now, where there are still staff on board working with them, but they're not the ones doing a lot of the direct instruction. The direct instruction is being done by the AI, and they are supporting the other aspects, the social emotional, some of the emotional intelligence pieces. They are, facilitating the development of the large problems, the world, especially, realistic or world-based types of problems. And I think your schools are going to look differently too, because do they need to be in the same traditional rows and all of those things? Of course, we've seen some movements away from and with flexible seating and a variety of other things, but I think this sort of model of the traditional. If you look at any of Sir Ken Robinson's work in the past and his conversations about the factory that is schools, I think we have to go beyond that at this point and look at a very different model. And that model might be a hybrid model where it's some done at home, where it is some done at specific locations, because there are still skills and knowledge that require a very hands-on approach and project-based approach. And I think that is some of the elements that will continue to evolve, because I do know that there is currently uh, companies using what they refer to, because they don't want to use the term metaverse anymore, but spatial AI.
Yeah,
And there are very virtual ways that you can recreate those environments with gloves and different things. But again, I don't think it's all there just yet, but I think it provides a very good precursor to the actual ability to do some of those works things in real life. I mean, I just was watching a vlog last night of a person living in Alaska that was doing remote heavy equipment operation. He just got up and went to his computer to do that work. Well, that's not traditionally something that you've seen, but these are things that I think are manifesting into careers and opportunities that we wouldn't have traditionally thought of. And so schools are really going to have to be adaptive to that. And this gets me back to sort of my sort of theme right now in my career, my life, which is leading with purpose. And we really should be examining what our purpose is in schools. I feel like the accountability movement has shifted us away from what that purpose is. And AI, I think, has really pushed us to really rethink what we're doing in schools. And to me, if our fundamental belief isn't preparing kids for society, then I think we have a problem in public education across the world. And but for me, that's AI is an integral part of that, because that's going to be an integral part of their lives. And so part of what we have to do is try to determine how do we incorporate that in a way that ensures their success as students when they exit our doors. And that's a question I think we're all wrestling with, and that there's not a clear answer because it is evolving so fast,
yeah.
and we will never keep up with what I would call that tsunami of change that is right in front of us. Um, but to me, it's also an exciting time because the possibilities uh, that we have, and some of the people like yourselves and companies like that you're involved with are doing some incredible steps in moving us forward. And I think it's just going to be hopefully we can create more and more synergy and advance a lot of public systems to try to achieve the goal, ensuring that students are ready for the future.
I have a little contrarian thought to what you just said. Um,
Sure.
so I get it. The education is transforming, the student needs are changing, the definition of schools will change. And I have talked to, I don't know if even one school leader right now who doesn't understand this, who doesn't embrace it. I haven't met them. So that means if you look at the stakeholders, everyone is waiting on it. But then what's stopping? Or why do you think there is still people moving away from public school system? Because the framework on which it is defined is going to pull it back. For example, standardized testing, the funding formula for the schools. Um, all those systems will what will it will do is they will not let you innovate, like they'll not let public school innovate the way it should be. So when you said that there can be a hybrid system, the direct instructions can be replaced, teachers may not be evaluated on the grading levels, but may be evaluated on the whole child thing. How do we define it? How do we make it a metric? I don't know. It's something which is still happening. Um, but yeah, I think the very goals that we're trying to achieve is something which is not allowing us to innovate, and that's the reason why people are actively switching to different school systems as well. Um, but I think the amount of work public schools have done is incredible. Like all the right now innovators, they are a product of this system itself. All the contributor to the society in art, or culture or mathematics, science, uh, whatever field you'll take, pick construction, real estate, insurance, all actually have gone through this public system only, right? So it's not a, it's something that I always wrestle with, that you cannot just diss it all together. But yeah, but it's also hard to change.
Yeah, your point is absolutely correct. And no, I didn't choose to go down that path, but you're right. I mean, there's so many systemic barriers here in West Virginia, even as a state ran sort of system. We will never achieve what schools need to look like within the system because of the legislative barriers, because of the legal codes. You just go down the list. There's a lot of barriers, but I think it's important that we in public education continue to strive for that. But I think the real innovation is going to happen in the companies that supports public education. It's going to happen in the charter schools. It's going to happen in the alternatives to that until that alternative model can be then developed that will, I think, then become the hybrid of a public-private uh, model. I think that's the evolution we're going to see because I don't think schools are going to ever fully meet that innovative approach. We're never going to be in front of the change curve. And then, like I said, with the tsunami that is AI that has now disrupted everything, we can't even hope to be anywhere near the front. My hope is we can tether ourselves to something that can drag us forward. Now, my hope is people like myself and others can slowly start to come together and maybe work with those companies and build some of those things that would be potentially a model outside of public education. And I've been this is my started my 25th year in public education, and I did spend 3 years abroad leading the system. um, Everybody's trying to find the right answers, and I don't know that there is a right answer right now for every single situation or scenario. But what I'm hopeful over is meeting more and more minds that recognize the need to shift and change things and go outside of those things. I think one of our predominant challenges remains is the resources to do that. And
Yeah,
I think AI is helping us eliminate some of those barriers to choice, some of it, but it's not quite where we want it yet. And I've never been an opponent to school choice or things like that, even though it's having a very negative impact to funding here in West Virginia and other places. But I recognize the fact that we're never going to be really what some of those parents really want for their kids' education and what I would want for my grandson at this point, for his education. And it saddens me a little bit, but at the same time, it's part of why I think it's important we have discussions like we're having today so that
exactly.
we can start changing the thinking about what it should look like, how it should move forward, how it should advance. Because at the end of the day, our purpose still is to make sure kids are ready for that future. And I think we're forgetting that too often in schools, and we're relying heavily on the processes that have been drudging on really since the 19th century. That hasn't evolved much other than some digitation of processes that exist in our systems. And so now we're sitting at a precipice of, I think, a critical juncture in the future of public education. If we don't make the right decisions now, we're going to get replaced. And that's as blunt as I can be and honest about it. I think that's where we're at.
No, I appreciate. I think you accepting this will be the first step, and I'll give you a few of my ideas. So because I don't want this conversation to end on a dismissal kind of emotion, because I see a lot of positivity as well. So first of all, I think AI readiness is something that is an obvious thing to do. But if I talk about the future of school look like, I have a perspective as a parent that I want to send my child to a school where he wants to go, where
Yes.
he will have fun. He know he's gonna meet friends. He's gonna have uh, open discussions, and he doesn't need to be burdened with a lot of homework or assignments. But his assignments are much more collaborative, much more like all the things you said, like problem oriented. And when I discuss with my child, he wants to share what happened in the school with excitement. So and I'm telling you what I just said. It might look generic, it might look very obvious, but it is as simple as that. And I think in the complexity of everything, we tend to miss the simple idea that what parents want is student to be just happy to go school, come back home, and share with us excitedly of what happened in the school. And and I think that's it. Because apart from that, if the school is enabling the child to be like right now, my child is very young and he's super curious. So I was discussing with my wife that I don't want his curiosity to go down with time. I just want his curiosity to go up in the right direction. So any school system or any teacher who will try to hamper it, I'll have a problem with it. So if they are giving him enough room to be stupid and and it doesn't feel like stupid, and then I think I'm sorted, whatever that school be. So and I think a lot of schools are working in that direction. So yeah, I am not.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that clarification, and I don't disagree with your sentiment. And I think that's why you still see a large support for public education as a whole. But I think one of the things that we have done, in large part, what I've witnessed, at least in my time in school districts, is we've sort of lost some of that element of our what I would define as our purpose. And one of the things to me that we've also done is we've kind of robbed kids of exploring their passions. And I know sometimes that can get looked at in a negative way, but I mean, if we're taking a student's passions and then focusing it towards a purpose and then leading that towards a career path, that's fulfillment. And as a parent and as a grandparent, that's really what we want for our kids. We want them to be happy and joyous, and we want them to enjoy the things that we do. So, my question is, why are we not having more conversations about what they're good at, what they're passionate about, what they want to work on in life? And for those people that have made those leaps out there in their own private lives, to do something, even if it's scary at first, I mean, but that fulfillment is what our target should be. And so I think that's a piece in this AI conversation that we should not be forgetting about as we develop human beings to be better human beings moving forward. Fulfillment should be our goal.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful thought, and I'm pretty sure a lot of school leaders who will consume this content will find tremendous value out of it. So yeah, thank you so much for giving us time. Anything that we haven't touched upon that you want to share?
No, I just encourage folks to keep pushing forward. Our kids matter, and the work that you do does matter. I know sometimes in education we feel beaten down and tired and worn out, and people don't always understand us, and we get criticized heavily at times. I know I do, at least in my role as we're facing a lot of financial and difficult decisions.
Yeah.
But just want to encourage people to continue to do what matters on behalf of our kids and continue to pursue their passions and fulfill their purpose in life, and hopefully they achieve that fulfillment that they all deserve.
No, I absolutely, and I actually thank you for your service as well to the public education, to the students, and I wish you all the best for
Thank you
the
very
new
much.
academic year.